The Survivor Specialists are back, and today we are predicting episode number 7 of Survivor 48 predictions and power rankings. And I am joined today by Gabe Ortiz from Survivor 47, fresh off the island not too long ago. And he's coming in here, though, more importantly, as Saul Daddy for anybody who's not watching. That's where'd you come up with that nickname? I've never seen that one before.
I mean, I got to pay homage to the ones who came before me on the specialists, and Saul was on here either last week or 2 weeks ago. He came out strong, as anybody who knows Saul knew he would, with his Saul Daddy moniker. So I'm paying a tribute to the one and only Saul Daddy, a.k.a. K-Daddy, a.k.a. Blame the Solo Money. How much time we got? Because I got a few more of these in the chamber.
I like that he's starting to do stand-up comedy now, because he's got enough nicknames to really just go around that world. And if he screws up somewhere, he can just go have a different nickname at the next place. They're never going to know it was him. It's great for him.
And then if stand-up comedy doesn't work out, he can start DJing. And then he can run through all of those names as it just put DJ at the beginning of it. DJ Saul Daddy, DJ Blame the Solo Money. It would be great.
I love DJ Saul Daddy. That's a great DJ
name. Right.
Now, last week, Saul had Charity in spot 12, not in spot 13. He had Say in spot 13. Obviously, you have hindsight here, so you can just talk trash or not. But what would you have thought last week? Would you have thought Charity was the one who was on the chopping block, or would you have thought Say?
I mean, I think I would have had both of them in those bottom two positions. Who I would have had where is tough. I like to think, and like you said, it's all in hindsight. I think I probably would have gone with Saul, though. I think I would have put Say in that last spot and Charity right above her. But at the same time, I think that it makes a lot of sense why Charity went when she did. And I think that we were denied a lot of Charity content by the edit simply because they never went to tribal council as an original tribe. And on the flip side of that coin, I think that we got a whole lot of Say content from the edit because she was constantly at tribal council. So I think everybody had a lot of reasons in their head why Say could have been an attractive target at that mergatory spot. And I think everybody on the island had a lot of reasons why Charity was an attractive target. We as an audience just didn't get to see that because of this 3-tribe format that they run with.
And so Siva goes into this with all 6 members intact at the final 13. And you were in a somewhat similar position. Obviously, you had lost TK, but you were on the tribe that was coming in with numbers to this mergatory portion of the game. How much did that weigh on you? And were you hearing rumblings of that conversation? Because it seems like that might be why Charity was ultimately the decision.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when we were going in with 5 Tukus to the merge. It was me, Sue, Caroline, Kyle, and Tiana. And it was all I was thinking about. It was all I was thinking about was what's the optimal way to navigate this situation, right? Because there's, one side of, well, let's just try to run all 5 of us until the wheels come off and maybe we can steamroll this and Tuku our way to the end. And there's the other school of thought, which is, well, let's just ask somebody right now. It doesn't matter who it is, as long as it's not me. Let's just ask somebody right now. And I was trying to think like, okay, is there a happy medium between those two approaches that could really put me in a good spot for the late portion of this game? And what I wanted to do was I wanted to go into that split tribal. I saw Rachel as this humongous threat at that point in the game. And obviously she goes on to win. But I saw Rachel as this humongous threat in the game. And I was like, we have her dead to rights right now. Let's just chop her and let's be done with this. And then going into next tribal, I wanted to then offer up Tiana. And I wanted to move really quickly on that. Like as soon as we got home from what would have been the Rachel boot, as soon as we got back, I wanted to start telling people Tiana's next, because then I can be the person who flipped on Tuku. And everybody else in the game who's scared of this Tuku majority can be like, Gabe's the crack. He's the guy that we can bring in to break them down. But once Tiana's gone, I go back to my real strong day one alliance of Caroline and Sue. And maybe we can run things till the end at that point. So when Caroline gets up and leaves tribal, I was very upset from a strategic standpoint because I had this kind of 2-layer plan laid out that I thought would have put me and my alliance members in a really good spot. And it got blown up in front of me, and I had to rush to the second phase of that plan and just get Tiana out right then and there. But then I don't really have a convenient Tuku to flip on, right? As everybody knows, I really, really, really wanted Tiana out of the game pretty much from like day 1 or day 2. And so like that was the perfect person to offer up as a sacrificial lamb to the rest of the tribe as, hey, I'm not part of this Tuku majority. You can take Tiana. But in reality, I wanted Tiana gone. So not being able to get out a huge threat. And then, as we all know, the eventual winner in Rachel really bugged me. And then also having to get rid of Tiana around earlier than I wanted to bugged me even more. So yes, I was, as you can tell, I was thinking about it a lot. And if you're this Siva 6 going into this, you're absolutely thinking about the same thing, because at the end of the day, you know, 6 will never be a majority. It'll be close, but it'll never be a majority in these mergatory situations. So I see from a tactical standpoint why you would want to get rid of somebody. And even just the small tidbits and breadcrumbs that we got, I see from a social standpoint. It seems like Charity didn't really have a lot of strong connections out there, with the exception of Mitch, who was blindsided going into this vote. And it seemed like a lot of people from the other tribes, whether it was through the tribe swap or once everybody hit the same beach, were rubbed the wrong way by her a little bit too. You know, you had Eva being like, I just think this person's fake. And she said that at a merge feast when everyone's kind of supposed to be happy and having a good time and we won and we're eating and this is great. And she was like, oh, I think Charity is kind of fake. And you have to imagine that if that sentiment is being shown in a confessional, there's not just one person who's thinking that, unless that's shown right afterwards, that other people are like, Eva and Charity don't seem to be getting along. But if you just see Eva being like, Charity seems kind of fake, and they never really touch on it again, that's probably a tribe-wide sentiment that is just being shown through the lens of one person's confessional. So I go back to the point of, I think there was a lot of Charity that led to her getting voted out that we just didn't get to see on the edit. So in hindsight, I'm really not surprised that she was the person, for both a tactical reason of Siva wanting to get rid of that majority as soon as they could to get that target off their back, and from a social aspect of, seems like a lot of people just didn't get along with her or didn't want to work with her.
Yeah, I feel like you hit all of that right on the head. And when I think about where Charity was standing on her original tribe, Charity kept thinking she was in good with people, that then as soon as she would say she was in good with them, we'd get a confessional immediately after from somebody else being like, I don't actually like Charity that much. And so it felt like, you know, how you're talking about, I'd get rid of Tiana to kind of give the illusion that I'm willing to turn on my people. It felt like Charity was the one where Siva says, okay, now we're down to 5. We're not as scary. Don't worry about it. But I also think what's a little bit more compelling this season, because they had this swap where they had it, you are getting some of these original Siva members who really are truly done with that Siva alliance. But David says it perfectly last week. He goes, I want everybody to think it's a possibility. Of course it's a possibility. You don't know, and let them feel like it is a possibility that I could just stick with the Sivas. But it seems like from what we've seen, David and Kyle and Camilla have moved past wanting to really work with Mitch and Chrissy. And it is more about how they're going to work with Eva, Cheyenne, Joe, and you know, people like that moving forward. But I'm not going to rule out Mitch and Chrissy 100% just because of one boot. Like I've been saying all week, just because Mitch was blindsided last week doesn't to me mean that Mitch is on the bottom, because this felt like a Charity problem, not a Charity and her alliance problem.
Oh yeah. And if you're on the rest of the tribe, and particularly if you're part of the group that was blindsiding Mitch, I don't think you look at Mitch now as somebody who like needs to go next. Quite the opposite. I think you're like, Mitch is waiting to be scooped up. And I imagine if everybody out there has the strategic aptitude that we think they do, we'll be running to Mitch after this tribal, being like, I'm so sorry I had to go down like that, but we really, really, really want to work with you. Here's what we want to do next. Like, you're in with us now. And Mitch is honestly in a pretty good position coming out of this Charity vote, because again, not only is he seen as a very attractive free agent in a tribe of people where it seems like everybody's pretty locked in at this point. I can't really think of too many free agents that are still out there, but now Mitch is one of those people. And he also doesn't have the issue that a lot of people have of being attached to a sinking ship, which is what Charity was, right? So, you know, there were probably a lot of people at many points in the game that were like, man, I really want to work with Mitch, but if I work with Mitch, that means I have to work with Charity. And I really don't want to work with Charity. And he doesn't have that problem anymore. So I think Mitch is honestly, I don't think he's in the best position, especially where we're at in this season. I think, like, you know, with the information we have coming out of last episode, we don't know which one of these alliances he's going to fall into. And if he does fall into one of these alliances, we don't know how he's going to navigate his way to the top of it, or at least into a comfortable position. So I wouldn't say he's particularly safe, but I don't think, I agree, he's not automatically on the bottom, not by a long shot. I think, you know, if you wanted to get Mitch out next, I don't know any plausible reason why somebody would want to do that.
Well, and I feel like, with Say out there, I think even with Cedric being seen as, you know, he's been playing the game, and I'm sure people are talking about now, man, Cedric's a little chaotic, like with why he's voting people out. Him and Say aren't getting along well. Kyle and Camilla have pulled off a really epic move on Shaheen and Joe, who are still left in the game. They know this. I feel like there's bigger reasons. And now also people, I think, are forgetting Mitch still has his block a vote, right? So he still has that advantage, which now when you're going to a 6-person tribe or whatever, they're merging to demerge, which always drives me nuts. But when they're doing this and they're splitting into 2 different tribes, you have Mitch with a block of vote on a 6-person tribe. So if he can just get 1 more person or 2 more people onto his side, he can run this vote. And we do know the 6-person split because Mike Bloom put them out there. And I'll read that off in a second because I think it actually puts Mitch in quite a good spot. But I think even if Mitch wasn't swapped or split into a good portion of this, I still think that Mitch could be able to use that block of vote to make something happen, because there could be a split vote scenario, or there could be people who just really, at the end of the day, why would you look at Mitch at this point? He's been good at challenges, but he's still not built in the same way that some of these other challenge beasts are. And he's not a professional athlete like some of the people on this season are. So for me, I would just be like, keep Mitch for a little bit, let him kind of find his footing, and try to pick him up at, 9 to make a 5-4 vote if you need him.
Yeah. And I mean, a guy like Mitch too, excuse me, he was really good in the tribal challenges. That doesn't always translate to these individual challenges as well, because the tribal challenges, it's a lot of like ball throwing. It's a lot of wall climbing, like obstacle course stuff, and you get back to that towards the end of the season, but you're going to have 4, 5, 6 straight challenges where it's all just balance and endurance. And I'm not saying that Mitch won't be good at that, but we haven't seen him put to the test, just like we haven't seen anybody put to the test, with the exception of, the 6 people, 7 people that competed for individual immunity last week. So I'm not looking at Mitch's challenge performance as something that I'm scared of quite yet. Now, if he manages to find his way through this run of balance and endurance challenges that are on the horizon, you get back to the obstacle courses where you got to toss balls and climb walls and swim in the water, then you might start thinking, okay, he could win out here until the end, and we can't let that happen. But that's so far in the future. It's just not time to think about that. Like, you got to get there first for it to be a problem. So yeah, I mean, I think Mitch is in a pretty good spot, but the flip side of all this is that he's also a very easy person's name to just throw out there. Yeah. Just to throw it out, just because it's like, he's not in our alliance. So what if we all just wake up tomorrow and vote Mitch? Yeah. That is a very big part of this. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't give enough credit for on Survivor as audience members or as analysts. The fact that, like, everybody just wants to wake up tomorrow. And people will lay out these big, intricate, strategic plans of how they want to do that. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of people who aren't thinking that deep strategically, who are so worn down and so homesick and so stressed out and so desperate to stay in the game that they'll hear a name and they will just run with it. They don't even need a reason. They don't need logic. They don't need rationale. It's just, it's not an alliance member and it's not me. So, we've given all of these very valid reasons that I stand by of why I think Mitch should not be a target, but also it's Survivor. And somebody could just be like, you know what? What if we just vote Mitch? And everyone just has to be like, okay. And then Mitch goes home. And he is in a position where a lot of different people could say that because he doesn't have a safe alliance right now.
And at final 12 here, everybody knows that you probably have to get through 12 and get to 11 to make the jury. So if you're that first tribe that is going to tribal council, obviously in your season, only one tribe actually voted. But for the most part in this new era, we are seeing two tribes go, and we saw Sifu miss and Caleb makes it because Caleb just happened to be on the tribe that got to go second. So he gets to be on the jury. Sifu misses it. If you're in that first tribe that's going and you hear a name get thrown out, you're going to say, great, let's make it happen. I want to be here for the full entirety of Survivor. I don't want to be getting on that plane to fly back to the States tomorrow. And I think that might have a big impact on the potential of why you could go.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, for what it's worth, I think that is the worst spot to go in, that the last spot before the jury, because like I would rather be the first person out. And I think I'd rather get like third than be in that last spot before the jury spot, because nowadays, not just the show, but the experience has become so slanted towards the jury, where if there's no pre-jury trip anymore, right? If you get voted out pre-jury, you don't get to go to Guatemala or somewhere in Polynesia or Australia or New Zealand for a 3-week backpacking trip with all of your new buddies. You don't get to go to the reunion show anymore. If you're not part of the jury, there's no live reunion show for you, at least not as things currently stand. That could change in the near future, but there is really high stakes of making the jury versus not making the jury. And it goes back to my former point and kind of what you're alluding to of, guys, let's all just wake up tomorrow. We all wake up tomorrow. We're all on the jury. And even if this is a terrible move for our game, even if we have to axe one of our alliance members, if somebody's working with Mitch, like, let's all just be here tomorrow. Can we all agree on that? And Mitch isn't even really working with anybody anyway. He just lost his number one ally. Who knows if he's going to win immunity or not? Let's just get him out of this game. This is such a critical juncture in this Survivor season. Let's just get him out and let's move on. So like Mitch is honestly, like, we could honestly probably do a whole hour just on like the state of Mitch right now, because he is in such a place where he is kind of beholden to the players around him, where do they want to work with him and bring him in, which I think would be the optimal strategic move, or do they want to take a bit of an easier, not as complex route and just say, hey, he's by himself, he's on an island, no pun intended, let's just get him out of here and let's all wake up tomorrow. So it's a very interesting spot, and I hope that they give him a proper spotlight going into this next episode to see how he's going to navigate this.
Yeah, and I know Mitch listens from time to time. So Mitch, if you're still here this far in, you're welcome for the 15-minute Mitch show.
I know,
that you just got. I know. I feel like he's been a little overshadowed in some of the episodes just because of all the chaos that's going on around him. But it's a big point. So let's talk about these divisions here. So here's the divisions coming into
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I know. Spoiler alert. This comes from Mike Bloom. He tweeted it out. I only pull this information from Mike Bloom. I don't go on Spoiled Survivor. I don't do any of that nonsense. I pull it from Bloom. If Bloom puts it out, I say, okay, that means that there must have been enough information there. Bloom's not going to ruin his relationship with CBS to
they
post
want
a
it out
spoiler.
there.
So here's what the split is. It's Chrissy, Eva, Joe, Mitch, Say, and Star. The other side is Cedric, David, Camilla, Kyle, Mary, and Cheyenne. So let's talk about this first one first, because we're already talking Mitch. Chrissy, Eva, Joe, Mitch, Say, Star. What's your initial take on that split?
So I'm looking at it right here on my phone now. Chrissy, Eva, Joe, Mitch, Say, Star. Well, obviously you got Eva and Joe together, so wherever the votes go, their votes are going the same way. So that's great for both of them. You have Chrissy and Mitch, who have that original Siva connection. Now, what I find interesting about that connection, though, is that for the Bianca vote, Chrissy and Mitch did not vote the same way. And I believe for the charity vote, Chrissy voted charity while Mitch voted set.
Chrissy was in on the split. Mitch was not.
Mitch was not. So these are two back-to-back votes, two back-to-back tribals that these two have gone to, and Chrissy has blindsided Mitch in both of them. So, you might look at the two orange hearts, as Mike Bloom has put on this graphic to indicate which tribes they've been on up to this point, and think, oh, well, they have that connection, and maybe that connection will be revived because of how cagey a split tribal like this is. But if I'm Mitch, I might be like, I can't trust this lady. She's lied right to my face twice about what she was going to do. I didn't know who was going home twice, and she did twice, and she could have clued me in, and she didn't. So, maybe Mitch will feel like he has nowhere else to go. Maybe Christy will feel like she has nowhere else to go, because let's not forget the other person that was involved in that Bianca tribal that is on this new tribe of 6 was Say, who Chrissy also blindsided, and Chrissy also has been very vocal about not getting along with Say and not wanting her in this game much longer. So I don't really see Chrissy having too many avenues to go with Mitch or Say, because I don't think either of them are going to want to vote with Chrissy, because she's, in terms of Say and Chrissy, they socially don't get along. And Mitch and Chrissy strategically clearly don't get along.
Mm-hmm.
So I would imagine Chrissy will probably try to find her way with Eva and Joe. At least that's what I would do if I was in Chrissy's position. And then maybe go over to Mitch and be like, hey, I want to mend fences here. Here's what's happening tonight. Here's where your vote needs to go. Whichever name they decide on. And then Star is the interesting wild card here, right? Because Star and Eva started this game very rocky. Eva was very clear the only person on her tribe that she did not want to stick around was Star. And then they had this moment with the immunity idol after the tribe swap, where, as everybody knows, Eva solved the puzzle for Star. Star, in the twilight of this huge emotional human moment that Eva had with Joe, decides to give Eva the idol, which I actually think was a galaxy-brained move by Star. And, we've given Mitch a lot of flowers this episode. I want to give Star her flowers, because not only has she emerged as this really funny, really charismatic, really just enjoyable to watch person out on the island and playing Survivor, she's emerging as a bit of a player too.
Yeah.
Which I didn't really foresee coming after the first couple episodes, but she's kind of bobbing and weaving her way through some difficult situations. And I think it all climaxed in the giving Eva the idol. And I think she achieved 2 things by doing that. I think that she mended Eva.
Oh, I just lost you there, Gabe. So, Gabe,
Okay,
you were in the middle.
I think we're back now.
Yeah, you're good now. You're back now. Yep. Let me see.
Okay.
So I lost.
Okay.
I lost you briefly. I think you're here.
Yeah, likewise. Okay. Well, both screens went black, but I think we're good now. Apologies for the folks listening back at home. But anyway, like I was saying, when Star gives Eva that idol, I think she achieves 2 things by doing that. Obviously, she now mends fences with Eva about as much as you possibly can, right? Like, you wanted me out of the game. Well, hey, here's a full-fledged immunity idol. Like, let's be friends now. And also, she takes the target off of her own back, Star's own back, and now kind of throws a big target on Eva under the guise of being friendly. And I think both things can be true. I think she could really want Eva to be in the good graces of Eva, and also want to throw a target on her back. So now if the moment ever comes, she can be like, Eva's got that idol, and I know she's got that idol because I gave it to her. So how long are we going to stick this around for? Also, keeping in mind that she has this big relationship with Joe. So it's a very interesting gameplay move that Star made last week. And I'm very intrigued to see how Star goes moving forward. But she's been a slam dunk casting from the TV perspective. I think she's so funny to watch. I've heard from people that, like, she was the comedian of the season, and that everybody at Tribal at camp was like, Star just had people cracking up. Excuse me. And now, like, she's getting some real recognition as a player too, and is making really valid and I think optimal, again, galaxy brain strategic moves that I didn't think she had in her bag. So hats off to Star. And as she falls in to this 6-person tribal council of Star, Say, Mitch, Joe, Eva, and Chrissy, I imagine that she's also going to be with Eva and Joe. It's hard to think, right? It's hard to think that Eva and Joe are not going to be deciding who goes home in this tribal, just because everybody knows that's 2 votes in 1. They're walking around as 2 votes. And if I, as an individual, latch on to wherever they want to go, I know bare minimum we're going to a tie. So there's going to be at least one person who looks at Eva and Joe and says, I'm going to go with you guys. Whoever you want to do, I'll go because I know you two are voting the same way.
Yeah. So the interesting dynamic here is we do have Mitch's block a vote and we have Eva's idol, like you said. Eva, Joe, and Star, I feel like will vote together. But when I look at this, that would mean that Mitch, Chrissy, and Say could actually easily take control of this tribe by playing the block a vote, right?
Yeah.
If Mitch plays the block a vote, they could get a 3-2 advantage. Now you still have to figure out who ultimately could play an idol. Would Eva, with a block of vote being played, play her idol for herself? Would she play it for Joe, whoever she thinks is coming? But what makes this so compelling is because of the mess of the final 14 vote, which was when Bianca went home. I don't think Say, Chrissy, and Mitch can work together, even though they were on the same tribe at that tribal council, because Say is going to be pissed at Mitch because Mitch voted for Say. Now, Mitch said his piece and explained why to Say, and Say understood that. But we saw Say throw a vote at Cedric last week because she was that pissed at Cedric and wanted him to kind of get one across the bow, right? So if that's how she's thinking, why would she want to go back and work with Mitch? And she's also a little skeptical of Chrissy because Chrissy, who ultimately saved her in that moment, still did something without her knowledge. Chrissy also is trying to get Say out of the game. So I just don't see a scenario where that group of 3 teams up. So for me, and I don't want to like spoil my power rankings, but for me, it comes down to Eva, Joe, and Star, who is ultimately going to latch on to them the most obviously. And I think Mitch is the obvious person there. And I think because Mitch is going to be pissed off, he's going to feel more betrayed by Chrissy than he is Eva, Joe, or Star. Him and Say probably aren't getting along that well anyway. And I think this is probably going to come down to, do they vote out Chrissy or do they vote out Say? And then we have the added layer of, I'm assuming, and somebody had asked in here, is it a double tribal or is it just one like last season? It is a double tribal based on what Bloom is saying. It is a 2-boot situation. And it looked like from the press release from CBS, it also said double trouble or something like that. So the other thing that we have to take into consideration is who could win this immunity challenge, which we know what the immunity challenge is. It's that hold your weight one, which you have like a percentage of your weight and the thing keeps twisting your hands. Did you do that one?
Yeah, we did. That one sucks, dude. That one sucks. It's like,
so
because it, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, is it something that really benefits somebody with a lot of upper body strength, or is it something that you're just like, it's kind of a crapshoot?
It is very, and I'm not like trying to throw like shade or anything, you know, because our season, Kyle and Sue won, and I thought it was awesome to see both of them win, but it is very heavily slanted, in my opinion, to people who just weigh less because you have less weight in your bucket. Like Sue was far and away the lightest woman. She was maybe 100 pounds when we were out there. And Kyle is like a skeleton man, you know, and I say that with a lot of love and admiration for Kyle Wren, but like he is a really, really, really skinny dude. And so the first person out of our challenge, I'm pretty sure, was Sam, who was like one of the biggest guys on our season. And Saul lasted pretty long, but, you know, Saul went out not at the end of the challenge. And it ended up being a face-off between Andy and Kyle. And I had, you know, because Andy's like a pretty big dude. You might not know it when you watch him on TV, but he's like a pretty built guy. And so he's somebody who I thought put in like a Herculean effort to make it through there. But it's very heavily so like I do not, and maybe I'll be proven wrong, right? Maybe this take will be completely obsolete and ice cold by the time we get to Wednesday. But I do not foresee Joe doing good in this challenge. I do not foresee David doing very good in this challenge. I don't think Kyle's going to do very good in this challenge. Kyle from 48. You know, just looking at the list of players, just throwing out a random, you know, guess out there. I think Shaheen's going to, because they're probably going to do it by gender, the same way they did it on 47. One guy, one, or well, no, they'll probably do it.
No, they're going to do it by
because they're going to split it.
That was the difference. Yeah.
So then looking at the split here, I think Shaheen is going to win from his group of people. And I could see Eva winning from her group of people.
That's who I thought too. Eva feels like she's going to win. And then if Eva wants to, she could play the idol for Joe to ensure they both make it through this vote. And then it comes down to are Chrissy, Mitch, and Say really going to vote out Star? I doubt it.
And so, and I want to get back to a little bit of how we were breaking down that group of people going to tribal. And I think that, you know, you gave out a lot of good strategic reasons that I wholeheartedly agree with on why Mitch and Chrissy probably won't want to work with Say. Let's also not forget that both of them have had confessionals. And maybe my memory's wrong, but I think both of them may have had multiple confessionals just saying, we don't really like Star, or we don't really like Say that much. Like, she kind of gets on my nerves. I think she's kind of annoying. I would really like to see her go home tonight, the night that Bianca went home. And that was the plan, seemingly, until Cedric blew it up. So just from a social perspective, and this is something that, like, a lot of people who watch the show, it's difficult to understand unless you're out there playing, is that, like, everybody thinks, like, well, why don't you just keep the really annoying person around, or why don't you just keep the chaotic person around as long as you can, because they're such a good shield. And, you know, you look at Boston Rob and Philip Shepard and Redemption Island, and it worked out so well for both of them. And Boston Rob goes and he wins because Shepard would never get votes at the end, blah, 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 blah. And you're not wrong. If you're playing a board game, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
But when you have to live with these people 24 hours a day, you don't have your own bedroom that you can go in and close the door and just hide out for the whole day until they leave the house or the apartment. When you have to spend all day long with these people, it is hard when you don't get along with them. It is really, really, really hard. And it's really easy to justify voting them out. And, you know, I thought the same thing a lot with TK, who I consider TK a friend now. I am always really happy when I see that guy walk into a room. I think he's an awesome dude. But when we were out there, I was like, TK is annoying the hell out of me. I can't stand this guy. He's so macho about everything he does. He's cracking jokes at everybody's expense a whole lot. And they did a pretty good job, I think, of showing that on the edit. And there was a big part of my brain that was like, if I keep this guy as long as possible and I make him think that we're in an alliance, like, I can axe him literally whenever I want. But it was very difficult socially to just live everyday life out there with somebody who I thought was annoying. So I'm sure a lot of people will be thinking, like, well, you should keep Say as long as possible because she's a great shield and she's, you know, a great lightning rod for everybody. It's not that easy. It's just not.
I also think people forget, because it was so long ago now, Philip and Boston Rob actually got along very well. That was the other thing people forget. Like, Philip was crazy to us as an audience. His confessionals were all over the place, and he drove that Zapatera tribe absolutely up a wall. But he got along really well with Natalie and with Rob, and that's why that trio actually did go far. Yeah, he drove Francesca crazy and Christina and the pre-merge and all that, but this was somebody that Boston Rob and Philip, like, Philip wasn't acting the way that he acted around everybody else around Boston Rob. And I think that's why Boston Rob, it was a little bit easier. Whereas Say is authentically Say no matter what. And good for her for being that way.
Yeah,
but she is authentically herself no matter what. And if that drives people crazy, that's going to drive them crazy. There's nothing you can really do about it. So let's talk about this other tribe, because we haven't really talked about any of these people. Cedric, David, Camilla, Kyle, Mary, and Shaheen. So we have 4 of the people from this, like, buff alliance. But we're also getting in the preview for next week, Camilla saying, we're going to set up Shaheen. Are you concerned that that actually means Shaheen could end up going home here? Or do you think that that might be Camilla talking to us about a plan that she's going to say to Cedric and Mary of, oh, trust us, it's going to be Shaheen, and then ultimately it's not? What do you think is going to happen here?
Yeah, this is a very interesting one for a lot of the reasons that you just laid out. And I also think that looking at this group of 6 people, I think that we have an established alliance between, as you said, Kyle, Camilla, and Shaheen from their days on the new Logi tribe after the tribe swap. David, since Mergatory, has been integrated into that alliance through Joe and through Kyle and through Shaheen. So that leaves 2 people on the chopping block right now, which would be Cedric and Mary, if you assume that these alliances hold true. Now, to your question about Shaheen, I don't think he's in trouble quite yet, because I think that at this stage in the game, again, it is so cagey. Everyone knows they are so close to where they want to be, which is on the jury. And we don't know which of these groups is going to be the jury group and which one is going to be the pre-jury group. So I'm kind of working under the assumption that both of them will be the pre-jury, you know. But I think that, like, coming out of this double vote, right, we're going to have 10 people left in the game after this week's episode. And that's still a lot of people left in the game. A 10-person tribal is a big tribal. Yeah. A 9-person tribal is a pretty big tribal. And I think you want to make sure that you have those numbers for those tribals that are on the horizon, you know? And so I think if you act Shaheen here, A, you lose one of those numbers, and B, you don't know how Joe and Eva on the other side of this are going to react to that. And if you come back to camp, Joe and Eva might be like, what the hell was that, dude? Like, Shaheen was in with us, particularly Joe, who was there at that new Locky camp, and they had that really deep personal connection that turned into a strategic connection. Like, he might be like, what the hell was that? That was our guy. He was not only part of our big alliance, but he was supposed to be one of the core 4 that we had. And you guys just axed him, and I'm hearing, and I had to go and watch it happen in front of me without having a say. No pun intended on say. But like we, you know, what's the deal with that? And so you might have to do some serious damage control with the alliance members on the other side of the split tribal, and you just lose one of your numbers going into a 10-person tribal. Like I don't know. Maybe they want to get rid of Shaheen because he does give off a very gamer vibe, you know, like he is out there to play the game. He does make it seem like he's willing to backstab and cut people off when he needs to, regardless if they're an alliance member or not. But it just feels so early. Like, what's the point of even making the alliance in the first place if you're going to ruin it within 2 tribals of it forming?
And you don't know what the other side is even going to do. Like, you don't know, like, if you vote off Shaheen and you're like, well, that's okay. We'll be able to talk to Joe and Eva and whatever and play, you know, whatever. And then you find out Mitch played a block a vote and Joe goes home. Now you've lost Joe and Shaheen, and now David and Kyle, you wanted to do strength and get the meatheads to the end. That's not going to work.
And now you've lost 2 of them.
Yeah.
And so 100%.
I think that makes this really, really, really difficult for this group of people to really try to pull a blind side, because you need to make sure your other side stays happy. And if the other side has something unexpected, like I think about 43, when James Jones went home, that was a big deal. That changed the dynamic of that next tribal council when James was sitting there, because James never thought he was going home.
Yeah.
And so I do feel, I mean, and then we saw it even, you know, a bigger example was probably in 42 when Roxroy got voted out. And that totally changed the way that Drea played that tribal council. So I believe that you probably play this as safe as you can. Now, if you're Cedric and Mary, you can't play this that safe. So you're going to try to do some things. And maybe Camilla feels like she's on the outs of this strength alliance, but I do feel like her and Kyle are the duo in that alliance. I think everybody here is probably going to try to play this as safe as they possibly can. And the way that these swaps worked out, I actually think it's very, very easy for everybody to play it safe and move through this game. And from an editing perspective, you know, to harp on that, because I'd love to on this podcast, there's a couple people on this season whose edits have really made no sense, who them going at this time would almost make those edits now make sense. So like I'll talk about that when I kind of like, so for example, Chrissy, I feel like we've heard so little from Chrissy this entire season, right? Yeah. She has not been that vocal of anything. Like we get her making one of the biggest moves of the season in blindsiding Bianca in a last second moment. The next episode, she has one confessional. She's been the most invisible person on the season. Yes, her tribe was winning, but then even when her tribe loses, we don't hear much. And then on the other side, somebody like Cedric, who has been so important to every single vote, I don't actually feel like we're hearing that much from Cedric on the actual island. And so if Cedric were to go here, I'd say, oh, that makes a little bit of sense. He gets screwed here at a split tribal. So even though he was such a big player in that early portion and has literally been the deciding vote in 3 votes, right?
Yeah.
Like he's the one who's deciding who's going home at these tribals. For him to be somebody who goes out in this moment at this split tribal, I would say, okay, it makes a little bit more sense why we didn't hear necessarily so much from him and didn't fall in love with this guy who was making move after move after move after move. And I think it's a little damning for him that last week we see him really bond with Star, and now those two are split up.
And yeah, for sure. And it's interesting, and I don't know, maybe we want to save some of this for power rankings talk. So I'll just kind of respond to what you're saying here, because I have a lot of thoughts on kind of broader what you're talking about, but I'll say for the power rankings, but specifically for Chrissy and for Cedric, I think that when you look at Chrissy, like, yes, her edit has been pretty sparse so far, and she did have a really big role to play in the Bianca vote. But I also think that they developed this Say versus Chrissy rivalry for a reason. I don't think that they would just put that in there for nothing. I don't think that they would also add in, that Mitch has the same sentiment of Say that Chrissy does for no reason. So it's either going to be Say is going to win this rivalry and get one of them out. I imagine Chrissy, because the tension between those two was a lot more emphasized than between Mitch and Say. Or it's going to be we get the full circle conclusion of that storyline that was developed in the Bianca episode, in this episode, where they kind of lay the opening, hey, this tension exists, this rivalry exists, and now we're going to hit the conclusion of it in this split tribal episode. Now, which way that conclusion goes, I don't know, because to your point, Say has been such a big character, has arguably been the main character of this season thus far, that maybe this could be some massive, huge move that she pulls and, gets out one of Chrissy or Mitch and blindsides the other one in the process, and comes out of this with a massive target on her back, a really, really strong resume move coming out of it, and that main character throughout the season. Or it could just be Chrissy and Mitch are like, we don't like Say, and now she's gone. It could go either way.
So why don't we get into the power rankings then, and I'll throw this out for everybody who's listening. Like this video, help us out, give us that like. That's always a nice thing. Gabe, start us off. Who do you have as the safest person this week?
So I have two sets of power rankings here, and I want to know which one you want, because I have 1 to 12. Because when I first made it, I didn't have in mind that they're doing the split tribal. So when you were talking at one point, I made 2 1 to 6 lists of the individual tribes that are going. So do you want 1 to 12, or do you want 1 to 6 for each tribe?
Do the 1 to 12, and then just, I guess, have your bottom 2 people as like 11 and 12, if that makes sense, because that's how I'm going to have the people who are playing in our game over on for our Patreon. That's how I have them do it. I mean, I'm assuming your 1 to 6 is no different than your 1 to 12, correct? Like the order of the 1 to 6 is the same.
It's a little different. I think there are people who would be in a lot more trouble at a 12-person tribal than people who are going into the 6-person tribal. So, like, for instance, I have Eva at 11. I think that she's in pretty big trouble, because everybody who's not part of that Muscle Alliance is like, she has an idol. This is a really big deal, and she's Joe's number 1. We can flush an idol out of the game, and we can disarm Joe, who is clearly a very strong power player in this game, not just physically, but strategically and socially as well. If we get Eva out, I think Eva is a very attractive target for anybody who's in this game. But in this 6-person tribal, I have her at the safest, because in a 6-person tribal, you are so much more inclined to play your idol if you have it, and she has the closest partnership of any permutation of the 6 people out there. So I think she would be in a lot of trouble in a 12-person tribal, but I think she's the safest in this specific 6-person tribal.
So why don't we do this then? Why don't you just do like, here's my one for this tribe, here's my one for this tribe, and I'll put them in as 1, 2, because I'm in agreement with you. Eva, with this split, I have her as my number 1 safest person of this week, because with this split, she has Joe, she has Star, who we're not going to see this Star and Eva bond for no reason. And also last week when Charity was saying, you should ask for the idol back, Star was like, I'm not going to do that. Like, there's no way. And I think if Star and Eva have moved past whatever they had early on in the game, I think those 3 are tight. Like I already said, I don't think Mitch, Chrissy, and Say team up to use the block a vote to get rid of one of them. And I think Eva has the best chance of winning this challenge out of anybody. There's a lot of great things working for Eva right now. So I agree with you. I have her at number 1 safest person this week with how this split worked out.
So I have Eva number 1 for that tribe. I have Joe at number 2, just for, pretty much all the same reasons we said for Eva, why she's safe. And then you just add on a little asterisk of, and Joe is her number one, and that is
Yeah.
why he is also safe. Below Joe, I have Star because, as you said, it seems like she's never really had a straight up problem with Joe. It always seems like their relationship was at worst neutral, and she now has this pretty overwhelmingly positive relationship with Eva. So I see the 3 original Loggy members on this split tribal in a really, really good place. Now, here's where it gets interesting, is the bottom 3 of this tribe, because I think that you can make justifiable cases for all 3 of them to be in any 3 of those bottom 3 spots. So I went with Mitch at number 4. He has the block a vote. I will be shocked if it doesn't come into play during this tribal. And that also makes him, if you are Chrissy and Say and you want to work together, or if you're obviously Eva and Joe and you want to work together, makes him the most attractive person to pull in because you want to be on the right side of that advantage getting played. So Mitch, as a free agent on this tribe of 6, is by far the most coveted free agent that you want going into the split tribal. You do not want to land. It's the only thing that can mess up your plans if you're Eva and Joe, is that this block of vote gets really funky and you don't anticipate it right, and one of you 2 ends up going home. So Mitch, I have
before you
number
do your
4
last
right
2. Don't do your last 2 yet. This is funny because so normally everybody goes like kind of one at a time, and we got Slay and Cliffo. Slow down, Gabe. And then we got Gabe and Gable are both swing for the fences with their power rankings. Gable did the same thing. So before you get to those last 2, what would it take? This is what I want to ask you, because pretty much so far everything you said about this group, I'm in agreement with.
Yeah.
What would it take for Joe to go home in this situation?
It would take Eva playing an idol for herself and Mitch playing a block of vote on either Eva and or Joe and being able to rally multiple votes against him. I mean, like, it would be really tough just because socially, like, I don't see, the path forward for that to happen. I see if Eva and Joe walk up to Mitch and or Chrissy and say, let's vote Say out tonight. I can't conceptualize Mitch or Chrissy being like, okay, but we could pull a really big move and get Joe out of here. I don't see it happening. And when it's so cagey and they know Eva has that idol, like, could it happen? Is it possible? Yes. Is it plausible? I don't even think a little bit, like not even a little bit.
Yeah, sorry, I need to yell at
no,
somebody.
All good. Yeah, do your policing.
Spoilers. You're getting banned. I don't know why people do this shit.
Hit him with the ban hammer, dude. Hit him with the ban hammer.
It's about to happen. The weird thing is it's somebody that like comes in here a lot. So I don't know why. I don't know if they're just saying this or if this is if they're actually like going on and reading spoilers. So I want to make sure before I ban them, because they're here all the time. I'm believing in forgiveness here. So now would be a good time to lie, even if that is a spoiler, and say, no, it's not. So that's the thing. I want to put Joe as my second safest person, but then what worries me, and I don't want to count Star out, right? Because we haven't seen Star do a lot in the challenges, and we see Eva be like, Star, you should sit out. But maybe that was kind of setting up for Star to win an immunity challenge and Eva underestimate her. What scares me is, let's say Star does win immunity on this tribe, and Eva plays her idol for herself. Is there a potential that the other 3 could boot Joe? I mean, like, that is who Say and Chrissy would be going for, no? Or at least Chrissy and Mitch, maybe. So it's very unlikely. I agree with you, but I'm trying to come up with a scenario where it's at least somewhat possible. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I don't know if there is one.
And like the other side of that too is that, like, who's to say Eva wouldn't play her idol for Joe? Like, I think that both of those outcomes are so openly possible, right? Like it's so out in the open how close both of those players are, and how much they're relying on each other. And I think that if you're trying to line up a move against either of them, you have to think that it is equally possible that Eva plays that idol for Joe as she does for herself. So you are really doing a 50-50 gamble over, are we going to pick the right person to vote out? Because maybe you devise this big plan to vote Joe out, and then Eva walks up and says, I'm playing my idol for Joe. And then you're like, well, now we're screwed and one of us is going home. Yeah. Or maybe the flip happens and you're like, well, let's try to anticipate she's playing the idol for Joe, and let's put the votes on Eva. And then she goes over and says, I'm playing this idol for myself. It's like both of those things are equally possible. And this is a very unique situation, a very interesting situation we find ourselves in, because I feel like oftentimes when there are tight alliance members and one of them has an idol, the school of thought is they're probably going to play it for themselves. If the plan leaks, they would play it for this other person, but they're probably going to play it for themselves. This, I don't think that is the probability. I think it is straight down the line. 50% she'd play it for herself. 50% she'd play it for Joe, almost to the point where she's like, I will sacrifice myself in this game so that you can go further. And I think Joe, if he was the one with the idol in his pocket, would be in the same position where he's like, I'll play an idol for Eva, even if it means that I'm going home. That's how tight these two are. So it makes it even more difficult to plan against them. And just from a strategic, like it's not the time to plan against them. You know, you don't do this in a 6-person tribal where you're right about to make the jury. And especially if you're part of the tribe that isn't guaranteed jury, then you like, there's no strategic reason to do this. My good friend Caroline Vidmar from season 47, her favorite quote is, I hate when people make big, stupid moves. People will make big moves that are flashy, but they're actually pretty bad for your game and oftentimes backfire. Going for Eva or Joe here, if you're Mitch or Chrissy or Star, feels like a big, stupid move. Yes, it'd be a big, big, big moment. They just had one of the biggest moments in Survivor history, right? From a TV perspective, the Eva Joe breakdown into consoling, into I have autism, everybody. I mean, hell, they reran the episode on Saturday night prime time. They decided it was such a big moment. And so if you wanted to come out and say like, hey, let's go get one of them now, like that would be a huge, huge, huge move to make, but at what cost? And is it really worth it right now? So like, could they get high on their haunches and say, we want to, take the spotlight away from them and put it in my hands and vote one of them out? Sure, that's always on the table. But I don't see why from a strategic perspective. I certainly don't see why from a social perspective, when, as we've said many times now, the people who would have to work together to pull that off don't even like each other. Like Mitch and Chrissy don't even like each other. They've been blindsiding each other this entire game. So I think there's a lot of mental gymnastics that have to go into play for that to actually come to fruition. It's kind of an Occam's razor situation, right?
Yeah.
What's the easiest thing that's going to happen? And it's not Eva or Joe going home.
And so with all of that said, I'll let you take your sip there of your drink. But with all of that said, so what order do you put Say and Chrissy here at the bottom then for you?
I put Chrissy at 5, Say at 6.
Okay. So do you think that this has the potential to be a dog pile 5-1 vote?
Oh yeah. I mean, just because like, I know I'm saying it a lot, but I'm going to keep saying it because it is, I think, the number one motivating factor in this stage of the game. And it's just the caginess of it all. Nobody wants to make a big move. Nobody wants to go into a tribal where they're not the target, but because they start scheming a really big move, they become the target. Like this is the, you do that at final 7, final 6, final 5, or you do it early in the game in, your pre-merge tribe when you're going to tribal for the first couple times and you want to establish yourself and get your footing as a strategic player. This is not when you make those kinds of moves. This is, I'm sitting at camp, I'm hanging out on the beach, I'm tending the fire. Oh, someone's walking up to me. Hey, we should vote this person tonight. Okay. That is how these votes go. And it's not particularly flashy. Maybe the advantages at play with this group of 6 could make it pretty flashy, but it's never a flashy strategy at this stage. It's always just what is going to get me to wake up on this island tomorrow. It's this person. All you needed to say, let's make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, right, so obviously, being at the bottom, I think Say is going to go home from this 6.
Yeah. So I just put all those as your odds for everybody who's listening, who's playing the power rankings. I just did 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. So you have Eva 1, Joe 3, Star 5, Mitch 7, Chrissy 9, Say 11. So why don't you do the other tribe, and then I'll kind of give my ranking in the 1 to 12 order, so that people can kind of get a sense, because so far we're in almost complete agreement on what's going to take place. So I don't even really have anything to add. I just want to see, is there a way that Joe could potentially be booted here? But let's talk about this other tribe. Go ahead.
So this one I find far more interesting. So I have Kyle at number 1. I think that he's got a decent shot of coming out and winning this challenge. I think, he's also a pretty big dude, so he's going to have a lot of weight in that bucket. Not as much weight as a David or a Joe. Excuse me. But I think he's got a pretty decent shot. And also, Andy was on Tyson's podcast not too long ago. And he had a really good point where they were just talking about Andy's challenge performance and how terrible it was. And he would laugh at me saying that, so I'm not being mean to him. But he was like, yeah, these Survivor challenges, they're tough because they're like these weird high-level carnival games. And so you can't really prepare for them no matter what you do. I ran an obstacle course that me and my dad built in my backyard of 15 different obstacles, all Survivor inspired, for the better part of a month before I went out there. And I still wasn't prepared for anything they threw at me, And so it's you kind of prepare as you go. And if you're in Andy's position and you're just this disaster from the beginning, it's very difficult and maybe even impossible to build your momentum back up and start doing good in these challenges. And I think Kyle could be on the opposite side of that spectrum. Whereas a tribe, they were very good at these challenges. And now he's the first person to wear the necklace. So he's coming into all these challenges with a lot of confidence and saying, I can do it because I have done it. So let me go do it again. And I think he's got a good shot at winning this. I also think that he is like Eva and Joe. And in this case, Eva, as his number 1 counterpart in my power rankings, is the person with the duo, right? Yeah. That's another big part of this too, is do you have a duo going into this, or will you split up from your duo? Kyle has Camilla with him. And Camilla has Kyle with him. So not to tease my number 2 safe spot here. But I think that Kyle is in a really good spot from the perspective of the challenge. I think he's in a really good spot in the fact that he has somebody who seemingly will vote with him whichever way he wants to go. Or on the flip side, he will vote with Camilla whichever way she wants to go. And she knows that. So I think Kyle's really safe here. I really, really like where Kyle's at going into this. And I would be shocked if he went home.
Yeah, it's funny. So my 1 and 2, doing this in the, not separating them, but I have Eva than Kyle. I agree with you 100%. I think the thing that would make Kyle scary would be he won immunity last week, but they're all talking about, let's go strength, 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 strength. Yeah. Camilla's not voting him out. David's not voting him out. So already he already has a 3-person alliance. So now if Mary, Shaheen, and Cedric want to team up to go against him, what ammunition do they have? They don't have an idol. There's no idol over here, right? The steal a vote has been used, or the extra vote. It was an extra vote that's been used. So I don't know what they could possibly do to get Kyle or Camilla or David out of this game. Yeah. And so from where I'm sitting, the only way Kyle would go home is if Camilla or David flip on him. Well, Camilla's definitely not flipping on him. Yeah. And maybe David would have a while ago, but I think after that conversation they had last week, and the fact that in the pre-merge, before we even saw the tribe split, we saw this birth of a Kyle-David relationship before it was even necessary to the story. I would be floored if Kyle got voted out. And I'll just say this. When I'm ranking these 1 to 12, I go Eva, Kyle, David, Camilla. That's how confident I am in Camilla and David being safe. And I give David a little bit
Kyle,
of an edge.
David, Camilla. Yeah.
Yeah. I give David a little bit of an edge over Camilla. And my only reason for doing that is because I do think that David is a little bit more in with more people. David and Shaheen, that's a thing, right? Yeah. Camilla and Shaheen is not a thing. And you could say, oh, well, Camilla could team up with Mary and Cedric. What has led us to believe that, other than the fact that we look at Camilla and see a smaller person? That's the only thing that would lead us to believe that. Nothing in the edit suggests that Camilla would go that way. So I give David a little bit of an edge over Camilla because I think he has 3 people along with himself that he can work with on that tribe, whereas Camilla has 2 people plus herself that she can work with on that tribe. But ultimately, I think they're totally safe.
Yeah, Agreed. I think the reason that I would put Camilla at 2 and David at 3 among this 6 is that I think like Kyle will fight to the death to keep Camilla in this game. If something crazy happened and Mary said and Shaheen all got together and said like we're voting David tonight no matter what, I don't think Kyle would fight for David as hard as he would fight for Camilla. Yeah, and so that's where I kind of give Camilla the edge, is that she has a very strong advocate in Kyle, where I think if Kyle was like, it's going to be more trouble than it's worth tonight to keep David in this game, particularly if Kyle himself is vulnerable, he's like, this sucks, but I'll axe him. Where if they were saying, we're voting Camilla tonight no matter what, I think Kyle would take it all the way up to the very end, trying to keep her in the game. But I do see what you're saying, where David probably has more weaker advocates, if that makes sense. Like there are more people that would rather David be in the game than Camilla right now, but Kyle wants Camilla in the game more than any of those people want David in the game. Yeah. So like, and then honestly, I don't like. I think that distinction just comes down to a value judgment of like what you as an analyst and a commentator value more. Would you rather have more people that want you in the game, but not quite as much as somebody who has one person that really wants them in the game? And I'm certainly biased from that perspective from my time when I played, because I had Sue, and Sue, like almost to my detriment, to be honest, wanted me in the game so bad that she couldn't even pretend that she was open to voting for me, So like, I know firsthand what the value of that kind of relationship is. And we've already seen them in a masterful way, might I say. I know that, this conversation, this point has been made ad hominem, but, the fact that they did what I think me and Sue failed to do, which was make it seem like we weren't that close as we got deeper into the game, that Kyle and Camilla are just like, they're set up in a really good way right now. But your point about David is very well taken. And I think that, 2 or 3, pick which one you want. It's all about what you value.
Yeah. And then just to kind of inch through my rankings here a little bit, like I said to you, Gabe, I'm almost in total agreement. I have Joe at 5. I have Star at 6. So same order, you have them in. So we literally have the same 3 safe on both sides, right? And then who would I put at 7? I would go Mitch at 7, and then I'll let you do the rest of your side over here and finish it out, because then I get into like a little bit more chaotic. But so what do you think? Is Shaheen? So we're getting some comments in the chat that are saying they think it's going to be Kyle because they think this plan is going to backfire, and that Shaheen is going to ultimately find out about this and decide, I'm going to vote Kyle out of the game, and maybe David will go along with it and all of that, and Cedric and Mary. But what are you seeing for Cedric, Mary, and Shaheen?
So this is pretty interesting. I put Shaheen at 4. I think that while we got a scene of Kyle telling Eva, I think it was, like, you got to watch out for Shaheen. Like, he's working with us now, but he's playing a hard game and he'll backstab people. That scene wasn't for nothing, like clearly that was there for a reason. And then even just getting away from like the edgic of it all, I also think that like that's a sign that Kyle, who is an architect of this alliance, is already laying the seeds of like, Shaheen is somebody who can be useful but not trusted. And I see a possibility here where perhaps the core of Kyle, Camilla, and David, also all original Sivas, could come out here and say, you know what, let's solve this problem before it becomes a problem. Like, let's get ahead of this right now. And we have 2 people in Cedric and Mary who I'm sure feel like are going to be on the bottom of this 6, which maybe that won't happen, but that's just my prediction. Then we can kind of pull them in, and maybe a Cedric and a Mary together is just as, if not more valuable than one Shaheen. So I do see a real world where they say, let's get out ahead of this and let's just take a really strong player out of the game right now and somebody who we consider to be a potential crack in this alliance moving forward. Do I think they should do that? Probably not, because again, like Shaheen seems to be very invested in this alliance. And if you want to do that, I think you do that in single digits. I don't think you do that at 12, 11, 10. I think you wait till you get to like 9, 7, 8 before you start having those conversations, because you're going to need numbers. And especially if they're trying to pull off this big dogs alliance where it's like, we're all the big guys, let's run this to the end and do it strong. Like, at some point in this game, people are going to come after you, as they do in every season of Survivor, because you're the big guys. And if you want to do this and you want to follow through with it, you need the numbers behind it. And Shaheen is one of those numbers. And when you get to single digits, those numbers don't become as important anymore, because obviously there's less numbers in the game.
And here's my thing. Like, when you talk about the physical threats, right? We're talking Eva, Kyle, David, Joe. Those seem to be the 4 that are in there, right? And then Shaheen is 5th. If you get through this double boot with Eva, Kyle, David, Joe, and Shaheen left in the game, you actually can make it so that your big, strong, whatever you want to call it, alliance, the Milk Alliance, I guess is what it should be, that this alliance now has half the control in the game, plus Kyle has Camilla in his back pocket. So you literally are talking, you can now run the rest of the game, but you have to get through this boot. So for me, if I'm Kyle, I truly believe that this scene, because I've watched so much of this show throughout over the years, right? Never stopping. I truly believe that this next time on Survivor is a total fake out where Mary and Kyle come up with a plan to convince Cedric and Mary. I'm sorry, I said Mary. I meant Kyle and Camilla come up with a plan that Cedric and Mary, to keep them calm, to ensure they don't play an advantage or some nonsense like that, oh no, it's going to be Shaheen. Trust us, it's going to be Shaheen. And that's what they're doing. And Camilla's saying, we're going to set up Shaheen as the one who's going to go. And then the rest of that sentence is going to be like, but really, we're going to blindside either Cedric or Mary. We just haven't figured out which one's going to be yet. That's what it feels like to me. I don't feel like they would give us all of that information coming into this episode. And if it is that way, and they are going to go after Shaheen, and maybe Shaheen goes home here. But I don't think that that's ultimately going to shake out, because if you're Kyle and you want to do this, you get through this, you can boot Shaheen at the next boot, because you and Camilla can flip together and boot him.
And then you still have the numbers after that.
Yeah, exactly.
And you still have the numbers after that, you know? Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I totally agree with that. I just, I just don't see any real strategic reason to do it now, other than you're so scared of Shaheen, like you think that he might, flip on you guys or whatever. But even then, if from Shaheen's perspective, if you put yourself in his shoes, now is not the time to flip on them, because then, like, this is the alliance you've been working your entire game to build. I mean, they've been out there for what, like 13, 14 days, about 2 weeks now. You've been spending 2 weeks of playing Survivor building up this alliance, and you're going to split it at the halfway point, and then you're going to get back to camp with 10 people left in the game, and you're going to have to start from square one to start building new alliances because you backstabbed the 5 other people that you're supposed to be working with. 5 if you don't count Camilla, because he doesn't know about that. Like, no, like, it would be a completely catastrophic strategic move from Shaheen to go and try and pull something like that. But I put him at 4 because I think if anybody of this strong alliance is on the chopping block week in, week out, it is Shaheen.
All right. And then who do you give? Actually, you know what? Let me do my power rankings here. Let me just kill mine, and then you can kill yours here at the end. But I go Eva, Kyle, David, Camilla, Joe, Star, Mitch. I already said that. And then I actually have Mary at number 8. I have her ahead of Shaheen. And I'll get to that reasoning in a second here. And then I have Shaheen at 9. I have Say at 10, and then I have Cedric and Chrissy as the 2 people going home. So I have Cedric at 11 and Chrissy at 12. And I have this comment here from Adam that says, for me, Cedric survives here because we had a dialogue and confessional from Chrissy saying Cedric has to drop Say because she'll be his downfall. They aren't in the same group, so it won't be here. I actually think that confessional was a foreshadowing of Chrissy being taken out by Say, and her being like, Say is going to be the downfall of Cedric, when really Say is going to be the downfall of Chrissy. The reason why I actually think Mary is safer than Cedric in this moment is because Say has put out there to people that Cedric isn't really trustworthy, right? That has been said. Now, ultimately, the people who are at that tribal council, when Bianca went home, they're all in the same tribe with Chrissy, Mitch, and Say, except for Cedric. So I could see people being concerned about Cedric from a strategic sense. And then they just watched him physically in the challenge and they said, man, that guy was terrible in that challenge. So maybe you're saying, let's keep him around. But what has Mary done? Yes, I know we have the great gif of her going in the mud. It's amazing. But what has Mary done to be great at challenges? Not really anything. Plus, I think it's been pretty well established probably at the swap and prior to the swap, and I'm sure people have talked to her, of Mary wasn't really in with her tribe at all early on. So Mary's kind of a wild card. Cedric doesn't feel like a wild card. I would prefer to keep Mary, get rid of somebody who is almost an anti-Shield because he's not good at challenges and who's going to be a little bit harder to read because he's made more chaotic decisions and has been playing more emotionally. That's just my feeling, but I'm going to put Cedric here. And also, look, I can't help myself. We are 7 episodes in. Cedric has gone to all but what? 1 tribal council?
Yeah.
The man has 15 confessionals. That's it. Like to me, and he has been the defining vote of so much. I just can't help but look past. I can't look past that and say, oh, whatever. Like, and we know as an audience, the editors have told us Cedric is the one who is making these decisions.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I think about some of these seasons where somebody gets 6 or 7 confessionals and then you do a tell-all afterwards and you hear from all their players like, no, that person was in control of everything. The edit just didn't show it. The edit is showing Cedric in control. It's just not giving us anything from Cedric. So I feel like Cedric go here in kind of that, J Maya Sifu kind of spot of, sorry, we didn't really have much for you. I think Cedric makes the jury. I think Chrissy misses the jury. That's my prediction.
So your 6 for your power rankings for the 6 is Kyle, David, Camilla, Mary, Shaheen, Cedric?
Yes.
Okay. So for my 5, 6 spots, I go Mary and then Cedric.
Okay.
I think that when I look at Mary, I think that, she is also a free agent right now in the same way that I see Mitch. And I think that Mary is somebody who a lot of people are looking at to be scooped up. I think that people look at Mary and they say, we can push our agenda forward by bringing her into our plans. And I don't think they look at her as somebody who needs to leave the game right now. And if we want to look at the Edgic and the confessionals, like Mary has been a superstar in her confessional so far. When you look at how much time she's gotten in them, I'm not sure the stats off the top of my head, but I know that she's in the top half of people when it comes to both quantity and time length of confessionals given. So I think we're getting a lot of Mary. And, just from an editing perspective, it'd be like a weird spot for her to leave. Yeah, it would feel almost kind of anticlimactic for her story to go out at this point. And also, I just I don't know, if I was out there, I would be really excited by the prospect of working with Mary if I was not on the original Rule the Tribe, if I wasn't Cedric or if I wasn't Cedric or Say. Excuse me. So I think that, and then also if you're Kyle, Camilla, David, and Shaheen, who are all part of this majority alliance in the game right now, I look at Mary as somebody who, if things get kind of wacky, if we do have to axe a Shaheen or a David or a Camilla or, a Joe or any of these people that are in that alliance right now earlier than we want, Mary would not be a bad person to just slot into that spot right away, because she's somebody who isn't particularly chaotic and does have her head screwed on straight. And this is something that I've been saying on a lot of the different shows I've been on, but I do think it's always pertinent is that, when I was out there, I had a lot of different groups I would break people up into. And the most general group I had is, do you have any idea what's going on right now? It sounds simple and kind of silly, but literally, do you know what you're doing right now? Do you understand who the people around you are? Like, or are you just thinking like, I got to make it to the next hour, and then I got to make it to the next hour, and now we can go to sleep. And when I wake up, I'm just going to make it to the challenge. And that, and those people have no idea what's going on. Or you have people who have like big time main character energy and are just like, I'm running the whole show and I'm a star right now and everything's going to go my way and I'm going to win. And it's like, oh, you have no idea what's happening, like none whatsoever. And Mary is somebody who, while I think has been playing a lot of her game from the bottom, has been doing so in a very cognizant way and does understand what's going on around her and does have a very good read on a lot of the people that she's playing with. And that's the kind of person you want to work with. You don't really want to work with a Cedric because I don't think he really knows what's going on. And I think he keeps getting thrust into these really big, powerful positions, but he doesn't want to be there. Like, Cedric is a guy that strikes me as somebody who applied and got through the casting process, deservedly so, and was doing it all with the intention of like, I just want to see what it's like. I just want to get out there and I want to see what it's like to talk to Jeff. I want to see what it's like to do the challenge. I want to see what it's like to sit at tribal council, but never really with the intention of like, I want to be a power player. I want to leave a legacy. I want to go win Survivor. And ironically and hilariously for us as an audience, he keeps being put in positions of a power player, of a strategic powerhouse, reluctantly so. And so that's not the kind of person that you want in your alliance moving forward or as a prospective alliance member, because you can't really trust what they're going to do because they don't really want to be doing any of this stuff, So I think, for complete opposite reasons, Mary is a very attractive potential future alliance member for a lot of people in this power alliance that exists both throughout the entire game and specifically within this group of 6 people. And I think Cedric isn't. And then also, I think an interesting point to bring up is that if any of these people want to break away from this majority alliance, for whatever reason they may have, I don't think that's a super smart idea, but maybe someone's cooking something up that I just can't see. I think Mary is one of the people who, for all the reasons I just stated, is a good person to be like, hey, I'm setting up my own thing. Like, you're coming with me, and like Cedric is not that kind of person, go ahead.
Here's the other thing that I think could actually play a big role in this, and we didn't really hear them interact much, but David was on a tribe with Mary. Yeah. So David has some experience. I don't know if that was 6 days, 5 days, whatever it was. He's lived for a couple days with Mary. He knows what Mary's like. Yeah. Cedric hasn't lived with any of these people other than Mary on this split. So, and we know that him and Mary, not necessarily, they weren't aligned by any means. And Mary's probably excited to vote out Cedric. So if David has gotten any information from Mary, even if he hasn't gotten information from Mary, he knows what Mary's like. And so I do feel like that, even though the tribe swaps and the tribes and whatever might not always mean something, the fact that Cedric is coming into this as a loner, as somebody who didn't get to play with any of these other people other than Mary for the beginning part, but when the swap happened, he didn't have any of them. I could see that being enough to get Cedric voted out of the game because David can go to bat for Mary and say, I know what she's like. She's been saying the whole time that Cedric and Say we're a problem. Let's get one half of that problem out.
And then, it kind of goes back to when we were making the dissertation between.
I lost you again. All right. I'm going to keep.
Just like, who are your advocates? And
you're back now. I lost you there. You said when you were making the dissertation, the dissertation between, and then I lost you.
Yeah. But between Camilla and David just now. And like that whole conversation was essentially, who are your advocates out there? Who are your advocates? Who are the people? And that is a critical part for Survivor. For any fans watching right now, any people who want to go play Survivor one day, people who maybe are playing Survivor one day and we just don't know it yet. That is a major part of having a successful game is you need to have advocates. And that is something that frankly, like applies to life too. I'm not going to get on like a pastor soapbox here, but like anybody who has become successful in any walk of life, in any career path, whatever it may be, I guarantee you those people will say the reason that I'm here right now is because I had people advocating for me in rooms and meetings that I was not a part of. They stepped up to bat for me. They defended my name when people tried to put it down. And when there was an opportunity presented for somebody, they offered my name up as somebody who could take that and be successful at it. Like Survivor is no different. There are conversations where people will be like, who should we vote out tonight? What if we voted out Mary? And like you said, David wouldn't be like, let's pump the brakes on that. I don't know if we want to do that. She's been pretty trustworthy. She's easy to get along with. She's a great time around camp. She's funny. She's lighthearted. And everything she's told me game and strategy wise has proven to be true. Cedric doesn't really have a lot of advocates in this game right now. His only advocate they had was Say, and he couldn't stop blindsiding her. So when Cedric's name gets thrown out, if someone's like, hey, maybe we should vote out Cedric tonight, I don't see anyone being like, oh, no. We're not going to vote out Cedric tonight for X, Y, and Z. I think a lot of people are like, okay, cool. Let's do it. And nobody is there to advocate for Cedric. And I think that is a big part, not just of Survivor in general, but specifically of this stage of the game where it's so cagey. So like, for instance, when we were at this stage of the game, well, really when we were at the charity vote out version of our game, when Rome went home, right? Rome had 0 advocates for him. There was a moment that didn't make it on camera, and I'm shocked it didn't make it on camera, but there were 13 of us left in the game. All 12 of us were at the shelter except for Rome. And somebody, I think it was Kyle Wren, just goes, so we're all voting Rome tonight, right? And everybody unanimously was like, yep, yeah. And then I think they didn't show that in the edit because there is a pretty cool montage of like just like all different groups of people back to back all going Rome tonight, yeah. So it kind of accomplishes the same thing from a production standpoint. But there was nobody who in their right mind would have put their hand up and said like, maybe we should keep Rome. Like, nobody. And when you get to this cagey part of the game where everybody is just looking for any name to get thrown out that isn't theirs, the only thing that can keep you safe is having advocates that will keep your name from being that name. And Cedric doesn't have that. He's totally by himself in this game. We had that nice moment with Star, which was a very awesome moment, in my opinion, and also lends itself to this great character and casting player that Star is becoming. But as you said earlier in the show, Star ain't there to save you, brother. So it's like, who's your advocate here? It ain't going to be Mary because Mary, his biggest nightmare is Say staying in the game, and you have kept Say in the game time after time after time, despite blindsiding her. And these other 4 people simply don't care about you as a player because you've never been a part of their plans, and they see you as an easy target at, the most critical juncture in the game. So it's hard to make a case for Cedric staying in this game past tonight. Unless something crazy happens. Maybe he plays a shot in the dark and it hits. Maybe somebody makes what, in my opinion, would be a terrible gameplay move and flips on one of the other 5. But yeah, so I go Kyle, Camilla, David, Shaheen, Mary, Cedric for this side of the tribal council.
Gotcha. All right, so we're pretty close in agreement there for the most part. Who do you think is going to win this season? And before you answer, I just want to tell you we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the 6th guest I've had this season. I have had a different answer by every single person so far.
Wow.
Whereas last season, it was like teeny, and then that became Rachel.
Yeah.
This season, it's all over the place.
Wow, that's very interesting. Okay, so it's tough because I think that I think the winner, I'll start here. I think the winner will be within the Meat Shield Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to come out of those 6 people, if you include Camilla. Who it is, though, gets tough. I think it seems that Kyle is, and I'm going to kind of make a short case for each person who I think is in that pool of winners. I think Kyle seems to be the most well-liked out of everybody. I think that he is at this interesting intersection of he's young enough to relate to the young people in the game. He's old enough and established enough in his personal life to relate to the older people in the game. So I think that when there's downtime around camp, all the stuff that we don't see on camera, I assume Kyle navigates that time pretty well. I don't think there's many different groups of people left in the game that could sit down with Kyle around the fire and not enjoy his company. And that's a very powerful thing, because when you get down to when you're voting for who you want to win, it's like Kyle never rubbed me the wrong way, And again, maybe that will change. Maybe Kyle will have a huge blow up with somebody at some point that I don't anticipate. But just from what I've seen through these 7 or so episodes, I think Kyle socially is in a really good way, and he's very insulated within this Meat Shield Alliance, and he's the only person within the Meat Shield Alliance, the majority alliance, that has a secret alliance member, number 1, that nobody knows about. Like, It's really hard to say Kyle is not in the best position in the game right now. Hold on 1 sec. I just need the charger for this laptop. It's not plugged in and it's on low.
Oh, you're all good. Yeah.
Moving through this alliance here, I think that, you look at Joe and Eva, I think it's very difficult to separate those two. If you are, thank you, getting this plugged in. If you're Joe and you're sitting at the end with Eva, which unless like fire making happens and one of them loses fire making, I don't see a world where Joe and Eva don't go to the end together. They're never going to vote each other out. I wholeheartedly believe that Joe would volunteer himself to leave the game if it meant Eva got to stay. Like I really believe that's the depth of this relationship that they have. But if you're at the end with both of those two, I think Joe has the case over Eva through 7 episodes of why he should win if he makes it. That's kind of maybe he's like, Eva played a great game, and if you want to give her vote, I totally understand. But I also think there's a world where he's like, I was her anchor this whole game. And yeah, she can say that she was mine, but when she hit rock bottom, I was there for her, and I kept her going. And I don't think Eva, at least from what we've seen, is going to have the same case to make against Joe. Camilla, I think, is in a great spot because she can say, look, I was and Kyle knew where my standing was, and I managed to keep that secret through the end of the game. And that is a very, very strong case to make. And she can also say, if she's sitting there with Kyle, the whole reason he had a safety net within this Meat Shield Alliance is because he knew that he had me in his back pocket that nobody else knew about. I could have blew that up at any point, and I chose not to because of how it furthered my game. And then you look at Shaheen and David. David, I think, is going to have a tough time getting to the end, because you are going to get to the point where being a physical threat's a big deal, where you're not just balancing a ball on a beam, where you got to run a whole obstacle course and solve a puzzle at the end. I think David will shine if he makes it to that point in the game. I also think that of everybody within this alliance, David's the only... Who's David's number 1 right now? Like, tell me who's David's number 1 right now. Shaheen, maybe? Like, I don't think so. I think Shaheen...
Yeah, I mean, it can't be. It was too soon. I think it's probably Kyle, honestly.
And Kyle's number 1 is not David, Yeah. And that's a bad place to be in Survivor, is when your number 1 is when you are not your number 1's number 1. When it's like, oh, Kyle's my number 1, that's my ride or die, that's my guy. And Kyle behind your back is like, well, Camilla's my number 1. But yeah, like, I'm working with David, but like when push comes to shove, Camilla is who I'm taking as far as I can. So I think David's in a place right now where he doesn't have a number 1. And he's in a place where you're going to get to a bottleneck in this game where you got to start voting out your alliance members. And Kyle is picking Camilla over David as things stand right now. And Eva and Joe are picking each other over David as things stand right now. So I don't really see his path to the end unless you were to go on some kind of, Mike Holloway, Rachel Lamont, immunity idol / immunity necklace run towards the end, which is in play. And then you look at Shaheen. I think that Shaheen is somebody who finds himself in, honestly, a very similar position as David, where, like, who's Shaheen's number 1 right now? Like, is it somebody from the revamped Logie tribe of Camilla, Kyle, and Joe? And it was Thomas, and now Thomas is gone, So it's like I get to the same point with Shaheen where I'm like, this guy, much like David, can make a really deep run into the game. But when you get down to final 7, final 6, final 5, and the only people left to vote out are your alliance members, he doesn't have a true ride or die number 1 that will keep him over the other alliance members. So it's like I just see him hitting this bottleneck and hitting this wall where people are like, I'm taking Camilla or Kyle over you, or I'm taking Eva and Joe over you. And everybody else who's in the game that I didn't mention, I want to make sure I got all the people that I do think are in the pool: Shaheen, Joe, David, Kyle, Camilla. Yeah, those are the people who I look at as the top 5 in this game right now, top 6. And Eva too. So yeah, top 6 of Eva, Camilla, Shaheen, Joe, David, and Kyle. Those are the people I look at in the pool of winners. I think that, Eva's going to have a big target on her back because of her story, because of how compelling it will be in a final tribal council, and because of the idol in her pocket. But she is insulated well. I think she's going to have a target on her back. I think she's going to be the target of many votes going forward. I just don't see them being successful because of how tight this alliance is. If you're going to put me on the spot and pick somebody out of those 6, it's tough, man. It's so tough. I think that Kyle is currently in the best position to win. I think in a final tribal, Joe would have the best case to make if he made it. So I'm going to submit Joe as my winner.
Oh, you're going to submit Joe. That's still so. Oh, JD had said Joe. So there you go. If you had said Kyle, you would have been the 7th.
Oh, are you kidding me? Oh, I was so
Kyle
the
6th unique answer. I was very excited.
Somebody picked Kyle.
I know.
Oh my God. I wanted to say Kyle too. Damn. Okay. Well, I won't backtrack, but I do want it to be said that I think Kyle's in the best position in the game right now, by far. And I don't see that shaking anytime soon. Damn, that pisses me off.
Yeah, you were so. I literally had written it down, and I was about to be like, "Wow!" And then you said, "So I'm gonna go with Joe," and I was like, I almost threw my notebook out the window,
Man, because I was kind of talking myself into Kyle as I was saying it, but I don't know. I just think if Joe gets to the end, he's a single dad with 2 kids. He's got this heart the size of a lion. Like, he seems to be very likable, and he's gonna, you assume, play a pretty loyal game. If you read the edit, and if you just read him as a guy, he's going to play a loyal game to the end. I don't know. Maybe my answer will change as the season goes on. I'm sure it will, but I really like Joe's chances of winning right now. I would say he's in the next best position behind Kyle. For everybody else who didn't get named in that, I think that a lot of these players are like just so messy, like a Say, for instance. To a certain degree, like a Star, like a Mitch. I think that these people are just a little too messy to put themselves in true winning position. And unless they can find cracks within this very strong alliance that I just outlined, like, their only way forward is going to be to rally everybody else in the game against that alliance. And it's like, good luck rallying Cedric, Say, Mitch, Chrissy, Mary, and Star. If I had to pick somebody out of that group, though, and I know I'm going on a tangent here, but if I had to pick somebody out of that group that's not in that pool of winners, that isn't in that pool of alliance, that I think could break through, I think it'd be Mary. I think that she has been playing a really great game from the bottom, which is like something that I don't think people give enough credit for. It is really hard to play from the bottom. And I think Mary's been doing a really good job of it. Again, to my former point, I think she does have a really good grasp of everything going on in the game. She was just on a disaster tribe. And it's like when you have this 3-tribe format, like, it's really hard to get a footing in the game, even if you are a good player, like I think Mary is. When you're just constantly going to tribal, you're constantly losing alliance members. If you're on a disaster tribe, it means you have some disaster players on your team, which, I would put multiple people from the original Vula tribe in the category of disaster player. But Mary is not one of them. Mary is somebody who I think could socialize her way and strategize her way into this majority alliance or find the cracks within it. I think she's somebody that if anybody was going to rally the rest of the players, I think Mary would be at the center of that. So I see her having a path forward to break through to the end, but it's just you're up against this mountain of like really physically strong players, really strategically strong players that all seem really bought in and working together right now. So it's like you could put, freaking whoever, Boston Rob, Tyson, like Tony, Sandra, whoever, they would have a hard time going up against this alliance because they seem really bought in. And between the 6 of them, they're going to win a ton of challenges. Like, let's be honest. Like, a lot of the immunity necklaces are going to be worn by people in this Meat Shield Alliance. So that makes it even more difficult. But, the fact that I can go on a tangent like that about who's going to win means that we got a really good season in front of us. So, I've been loving it, and it's been awesome.
I feel like it's been pretty wide open. So I got 2 more for you regarding Survivor stuff. So first is, from your season, who would you most want to see on 50?
Ooh, specifically on 50, not just a returning season.
Yeah, specifically on 50. Who would you want to see on 50 from your season?
Okay. I think my gut answer is Genevieve, because I think she would have the best chance of winning. But my secondary answer would, my most interesting answer would be Andy, because Andy's game would have to be so radically different from how he played on 47 that I would pay so much money to see that, happen. I don't think he would be in a good position to win if he went back out for 50 for the reason I just stated. But I also would like to see him defy that prediction. And I think he has the capability and the game aptitude to do it. Because Andy's whole game when he was out there, not that this is a mystery to anybody who watched that season, was that he was like this helpless puppy. And he was like, I can't do anything right. And come scoop me up and I'll vote however you want me to vote. And I'm not going to win any challenges. And I'm a big klutz around camp. And, I don't even know if anybody likes me out here. But then really the whole time he's like, this is a character I'm playing. They're all falling for it. I blindsided the winner of our season 3 different times. I'm the swing vote in every single vote. But he could only do that because nobody knew who the hell Andy Rueda was. Now everyone knows who Andy Rueda is. So you can't go out there and be like, well, I can't do anything right, because everyone's going to be like, shut up, dude. We all know your game. So he would have to go out there as a threat from day one, when on 47, he was on the bottom of the season from day one. So I'd be very, very intrigued to see how that would play out. But if a 47 person goes out there, I want him to win. And I think Genevieve would have the best chance of winning out of all of us, because she's a killer.
Andy is so David Wright. That's such a good, what you were describing. I think of David Wright and Millennials vs. Gen X. Oh, I don't know what's going on, everybody. And Brett and Chris being like, dude, this guy is so smart. What does he do? We got to get him out of the game. And then he comes out for Edge of Extinction. He tries to play the same thing. And I always just think about the one tribal council on Edge of Extinction, where every single person was like, David, would you stop doing that? Stop acting like he was like, I'm not a threat. And they're like, shut up. Yes, you are. Just stop trying to pretend you're not. Because at that point, we all saw what made David good at the game. So Andy would have to overcome a lot. Saul last week also said Genevieve as his answer from your season.
I think that would be the answer from many people from 47 if you asked them.
Just because the answers from the fans too. So it's not crazy. Yeah, it's not too crazy. There's no disconnect there.
No, and I think that she is somebody who just has this great understanding of the game, and I think she's somebody who could play a very similar way. In my opinion, Genevieve's superpower is her foresight, that she can see into the future more than any Survivor player that I can think of, straight up throughout the history of the game. And I'm very biased when I say that because I witnessed it firsthand. But for instance, as an example, Genevieve and Teeny, right, at each other's throats for a large majority of the game. And Saul gets voted out. And Genevieve's relationship with Teeny is all but shattered at that point, right? Genevieve blindsided Asia to save Rome earlier in the game, and Teeny was pissed about it because Teeny really wanted to work with Asia. Then Teeny loses her best friend in the game and her number one in Saul, again, by the hands of Genevieve. And that relationship is all but shattered. And Genevieve spent well over an hour after that Saul tribal, just trying to mend fences with Teeny. And it didn't really work. And then going into the next vote, which was mine, Teeny was at the shelter. It was just me and Teeny. And Teeny was like, hey, Gabe, and this is my biggest mistake in the game, bar none. But I'll say this so that this is the biggest mistake I made in the game. And I feel like an idiot for doing this. It's a huge flaw that I have in my game, and I'll own that. Was Teeny was because I was part of that blind side too. I was sitting next to Teeny at Tribal, And at one point, Teeny was like, "Who are you voting for?" And I said, "Kyle." And she was like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, do you think that Sam's going to play an idol? Because if not, we can vote." It's like, I'm just lying to Teeny's face blatantly. And then all the votes showed that. And the next day, Teeny comes up to me and they're like, "Hey, so about last night, like," and I cut Teeny off and I go, "Teeny, we're not even thinking about that anymore. Like, we're all good. Like, we're on to the next thing. Like, there's nothing to talk about." And Genevieve had the foresight to be like, "This is a very emotional player. This is a player who is currently in a very fragile state, and I know how much they don't like me, but I need to at least put the effort forward to try and make things right so that this doesn't come back to bite me in the end." And I think part of that is, again, Genevieve's superpower of her foresight and her insistence on constantly reaffirming her relationships and constantly reaffirming where she stood in the game with people that she thought she was working with, but also the fact that Genevieve knew Teeny so well because they had been together since day one. So I didn't have that insight into Teeny's personality quite yet. I didn't know I thought that Teeny was going to be like me and be like, we're all just playing the game and that's how it goes and we're all moving on, when really Teeny was really hurt when Saul left for a multitude of reasons. And I think that Genevieve talking to Teeny and being like, "Hey, that sucked. I know. I'm sorry. I don't know the full context of that conversation, but that was the gist of it." And then I think Teeny, after that, came up to me and was like, "Well, let's see what Gabe's got." And when I was like, "Teeny, get over it," I think at that moment, Teeny was like, "I'm so angry at Genevieve still, but not as angry as I am at Gabe."
But
so
at least
Gabe's
Genevieve talked to me. Yeah.
Exactly. So like Genevieve is somebody who just has that just such a vibrant and clear self-awareness of where she is in the game and where her relationship stands with other people. And if she doesn't have that clarity, she has the agency to go seek that clarity out and get it. And that's something that I know as a viewer seems very easy because you see where everybody stands with everybody else through confessionals. But when you're a player, you don't have that insight, and it's on you to go seek it out. And Genevieve is very good at that, and that is a skill that is learned and trained. It's not just something that you do. So I think that that's something she can transcend seasons. You could put her on Heroes versus Villains in season 20. You could put her on Pearl Island season 8. You could put her on Heroes, Hustlers, whatever. You could put her on 47. Like, she's going to do great in all of them. So hopefully she gets on 50 and she kills it there too.
So, and then you had a hot take here. Your hot take during the season, if I'm not mistaken, or before the season, you were defending Russell Hantz, right? So wasn't that your hot take? So my question, yes. My question is, from all of the Survivor seasons, who would you want to see return for 50? If you could only pick one player, like they must be on there, or I'm not going to feel satisfied.
Wow, that's tough, man. Well, so okay, so here's the thing. Like, how much time do we got? Can we keep going here? Like,
you go. I told you this would probably be an hour, and we're at an hour 41. I said, whatever you want to make this, man, it's your show. I'm here.
So I think that 50 is interesting, right? Because like all these rumors have come out, and like for everybody watching, and even for you, Phil, like I don't know nothing about nothing. I literally don't know anything about anything.
Let this man cook. You're cooking. Yeah. Go.
Thank you. I don't know nothing about nothing, but other than like all the rumors that we've seen online, and some of them I think we can give a lot of credit to. They seem very credible. Some of them just seem like people are throwing whatever at the wall and hoping it sticks. But I think that Jeff and his team of producers did this new era thing on the back of COVID, and it was at the time largely unpopular with large swaths of the fan base, casual fans and hardcore online fans alike. It has continued to be pretty unpopular, although I think people are getting more into it just because they're getting more used to it. But if you asked any fan, and I think we're going to see it reflected in this Hands of the Fan vote that they're doing, if you could go back to 39 days, if you could go back to 2 tribes, if you could go back to a live reunion, if you could get rid of Fire making a Final Four, I think the large majority of fans would vote to revert back to pre-New Era Survivor. But they did this thing. They did this New Era thing, and they said, this is what we're doing. And I think it's a huge misstep on their part to not build up the pool of players and stars that you have from the New Era, because if you're a fan and you're like, I'm not really into this new era thing. It doesn't, it's not really my thing. I don't like a lot of the changes you've made. And then you get to 50 and there's like 2 or 3 new era people on it. Then you're like, okay, well, you guys aren't even into it because this is supposed to be the biggest season in the history of Survivor. And you guys aren't even bossing up your pool of new era players that you have. And we've seen rumors come out that it's only going to be like 3 new era people. And according to the rumors, apparently CBS were the ones who stepped in and said, no. We're going to have, the Cerise and the Parvati's and the Boston Robs and the whoever's out there. And we'll give you a couple of new era people just to keep the peace. But like, we're not doing that. And okay, hey, if that's what your bosses say, that's what your bosses say. But an alternative to that could have been, why not do something special for the new era with season 49? Season 47 or season 41 to 48, tied the longest streak they've had without having a returnee season. Why not do something special just for the new era with season 49? New era second chances, new era all-stars, whatever you want to make it. Because then as a fan, you can be like, oh, they're really into this to the point where they're kind of giving, the new era its own Avengers Endgame style season. And they're bringing all the greats together to battle it out and see who wins. And the fact that they're not doing that, I think, is a huge misstep. So, and I have a lot of issues with the new era too, as somebody who played in it. I also have a lot of respect for the new era, and I see the vision that they're going for. So in terms of 50, I really wish that there were some heavy hitters of the new era in there. I wish there was a Carolyn in there, which according to her, she won't be. I wish there was a Jesse Lopez in there, which according to him, there won't be. So I understand the spirit of your question, though. I kind of hijacked your question to go on my soapbox about the misstep. So to answer your question, the person who I think as a fan, for me as a fan, I would really, really want to see on 50. It's tough, man, because I have to think from gameplay perspective, but also from TV perspective. Like, how crazy would it be if they bring everybody out and it's like, oh, we got one more player for you, and like Johnny Fairplay walks out? Like, that would be like, oh my God. Like, it would be, not to use another MCU reference, but it would be like Captain America grabbing Thor's hammer, like that, or like if they were like, we're bringing Russell Hantz back. Like, oh my God, I can't believe they just did that. From a gameplay perspective, my favorite player of all time is Jeremy Collins. So, like, that's my easy answer. I think Jeremy being out there again for what would be his 4th time would be really, really interesting. I would love to see how he would approach the game as a slightly older guy and approach the new era game as well. I learned more from Jeremy's Second Chances game than anybody's game ever when I was getting ready to go out there. Oh, it's the best winning game, in my opinion, ever. And also what's interesting about it is that I think that he had the most growth from his first time playing to his second time playing of anybody who's ever played the game. Like, he went out there in Blood versus Water and he was like, I'm a challenge guy. I'm a football player. I'm going to win all the challenges, blah, 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 blah. And you're the Mayor Ponderosa, because that's who those guys always are. And to go from that to then be this like socially aware, strategic powerhouse and still a physical threat and go win the whole thing was like, I mean, we can do a whole hour on that if we want. So I would love to see Jeremy out there as my all-time favorite player. But like thinking about like some sneakier picks, I think it would be really cool if they got oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking right now. I think it would be really cool if they got Natalie White out there. I don't think she would ever do it, but how cool would that be?
That would be great. I would love that.
The single most disrespected winner in the history of Survivor, like, and to bring her out there, like, not only do I think it would validate her win in a lot of ways, and this is coming from somebody who, like, yeah, I'm a Russell Hantz fan. I think he's one of the most entertaining players to ever play the game. But to validate Natalie's game and then to also give her the opportunity to play Survivor without the burden of being Russell Hantz's number one throughout the game, like, that would be awesome, because that's one of the biggest question marks, I think, in Survivor history. Who was Natalie White really out there? You know, was she somebody who was deserving of a win? Did she actually play this great game that nobody got to see? Or did she just win because she wasn't Russell? And I think if you threw her out there again, especially in a returnee season against all the greats, you would really get an answer to, in my opinion, what is one of, if not the biggest Survivor question mark that's out there. It's like, who the hell is Natalie White? But she went on and she won. So I would love Natalie to be out there. That would be awesome for me.
I would love that too. I mean, I've always said like Natalie, Bob Crowley, like those are the types of players that I'm always like, why didn't we see any of them for Winners at War? Like, I want to see those types of, they're disrespected, and we're, for our patrons, we're rewatching Gabon right now. And so like I'm going through and I'm watching Bob's game and I'm like, yo, his game is like, it's underrated. Like the decision he makes.
I agree. Yes.
When he makes up that story about throwing the bottle into the water and how Marcus actually pulled out the idol and did that, Kenny buys that, and that is what wins Bob the game and loses Kenny the game. And that's like one of the most underrated moves in the history of Survivor. Nobody talks about it. So for me, I love what you're saying here. And to go back kind of to your earlier point where you were talking about, you know, how you feel like it's a misstep by, you know, production here, maybe to not have more of the new era players. I think they did back themselves into a corner a bit, because I understand wanting to go a long stretch and make the new era and say, look, this is our new cast. 40 feels like the end of one era. But you knew with 50 coming up that for as much as Jeff is the defining person in so many of the decisions that go on with Survivor, he does not own CBS, right? He makes a lot of the decisions for Survivor, but Jeff has a boss, right? There is somebody above Jeff who is saying, these are the decisions you have to make. I think a little bit of a lack of foresight there of not seeing like, hey, for 50, with this being a celebration of Survivor, if Rupert's willing, they're going to want Rupert. If Jerry and Colby are willing, they're going to want Jerry and Colby. Like, that's just a fact because they built these people up. I'm hopeful, and I'm very hopeful. And this is the one thing that I will say to the Jessies and the Carolines, if they have listened to an hour and 50 minutes of us chatting about season 48 power rankings. Be patient with this and don't burn a bridge, because I do truly believe that season 52 or season 51 is going to be a new era all-star season. And here's what I will say. That doesn't mean that nobody from 50 could potentially be on that season 52 season. Yeah. I just think that they're realizing, I was saying the whole offseason, I've pretty much been saying since Jeff made his announcement, season 50, I would like, as a day one fan, I would like to be more old school players, because when I'm rewatching Tocantins and Gabon, that's my thing, right? Like, I watch Brendan and Tyson at Ponderosa. I rewatch their Ponderosa videos as me and my wife are rewatching Tocantins right now, because that's how entertained I am by them. I never watched the Ponderosas for season 34 or 35 or whatever, whenever it ended. I don't even remember when it ended, but I didn't watch those because that wasn't for me as much. So I'd like to get some of those old school players, but I do also understand some of the frustration of the new era cast of being like, but we just did this whole thing for 8 seasons, about to be 9, and you're not doing anything with us. I think that's a problem. And I do agree. If 50 is predominantly older school, it's because it's a celebration of Survivor. But Jeff, even more now, in my opinion, is going to say, I want to prove to CBS and I want to prove to my bosses that the new era was worth it and that it found its groove and that it has become great. And I want season 52 to be even better than 50. And I'm going to get a new era all-stars, and I'm going to kind of prove it, because it's not a big monumental season. It doesn't have that, fake 50 has to be big because it's 50. 52 has to be big. It's 52. I think that Jeff is going to want to prove that big time. And I think he can, because there's such a big pool. And based on what we're hearing, they're probably not going to use much of that pool for season 50. So I just say, be patient. Don't burn bridges. There's a very good likelihood, if you want to play, that there's going to be a new era all-stars that is coming very short. Probably not 51, because they won't want to take away the thunder from 50. Yeah. But 52, I could easily see. Remember, after season 20, season 21 was a newbie. Season 22 had Russell and Rob. Season 23 had Coach and Ozzy. Like, they've had to find their rhythm, and then they started to find their rhythm in the back half of the 20s. After All-Stars, 9 and 10 were all newbies. 11 has Stephanie and Bobby John. Like, they will, after Second Chance, all of a sudden, 2 seasons, 3 seasons later, you got game changers. Yeah. They know, they see the hype after these all-star seasons. Oh, yeah. Hype is going to be there, and it is going to be acted upon, because there are too many big players from the new era that have not had a second chance yet.
No, I think that is like excellent. I think that, honestly,
if they could, I think Jeff would want to take the speech that you just gave and send it out to every new era player, or at least the ones that they want to come back. Because no, I think you're right. And so, like, for instance, like, it's not a very well kept secret that Jeff never wanted to do an all winter season. And when they hit 40, that was CBS coming in and saying, you're going to do an all winter season because we said so. So figure it out, And I think that there are a lot of players in specific who could really benefit from hearing, don't burn any bridges and just, exercise some patience with this. But I think that the missed opportunity was doing something special for the new era in 49. And that be like, okay, we acknowledge that we are into this, that these players deserve their spot at the table, and now we're going to go do 50. And then the blow is a lot easier when you don't see a lot of new era people in 50, because it's like, well, they just got their moment, and all the new era people that we would have pulled for 50 were out here filming a month ago, and so, like, a lot of those people simply wouldn't be available to go do 50. And just so, like, logistically, culturally, like, financially, it would work out really good if you did something special with 49. So I'm very disappointed that they didn't. But yes, I think that on the other side of 50, they can still course correct a little bit. It's just frustrating that we have to wait, another year or two to get there.
And part of me does wonder if they were considering maybe doing something for season 49, and then they got concerned, oh man, if we do season 49, is that going to steal some of the thunder from 50? You know what I mean? Because if you do a back-to-back all-star season, now if you're doing 49, are people too focused on 49 that they're not getting excited for 50?
Yeah,
and it sucks if you're playing 48 and 49. We saw this with Edge of Extinction and then Island of the Idols. Those two seasons get totally overshadowed because season 40 was coming, and that's all people were talking about. So,
And I mean, like, no disrespect to anybody who's on 49, I'm sure they're going to go out there and kill it, but that is, like, one of the worst seasons to be on in Survivor. You are just the undercard for.
And think about 19, right? Samoa, that whole season is literally just Russell Hantz, and it's a Russell Hantz trailer for him being on Heroes versus Villains.
Yeah.
Everybody else gets overshadowed because they were already saying he's going to go and he's going to play the next season. We know he's going to do well. Let's edit the hell out of this to make Russell the face of this, so that people are extra hyped for Heroes Villains. And that's what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you have a lot of people on Samoa who are, like, in my opinion, compelling players and characters, like Natalie White, like Danger Dave Ball, who, like, will always just kind of be forgotten as, like, these role players in the Russell Hantz season, which was 19. So, I feel for 49. I think that, like I said, it's still going to be awesome because it's Survivor, and I'm sure it's going to be a cast of awesome people. But yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. It's a really, really tough spot to be in. So hopefully we get some 47 representation on 50, and I have someone to go root for and go win the whole thing. That'd be pretty badass. But we'll see. And they always seem to find their ways. I have no doubt that they'll figure it out because they've just been doing it forever. But yeah, no, I have no doubt that it'll be a big success.
So now that we're even closer to this happening, if anybody made it this far, you're welcome. Now you get sharp Gabe, because I told him I was going to make him do this. So we're ending this podcast the right way. The Final Four starts in 4 hours and 12 minutes.
Yep.
What do you got? What's your Final Four? What's your national championship prediction? Hit the fans with what they really need.
Okay, so everybody, you are now tuning in to the main event of the show. The Survivor Sharp is making his picks for the Final Four tonight in March Madness. This entire tournament has been chalky as hell. It's been one of the chalkiest tournaments that we've ever seen. You have 4 1 seeds in the Final Four. So let's start with the first game here. Florida versus Auburn. Florida is opening as 2.5-point favorites. I'm going to go anti-chalk here. I'm going to go with the underdog in Auburn. I think the Tigers find their way into the March Madness final. I think they find their way to their first ever March Madness title. Yes, I know I spoiled my final champion pick there, but I think Auburn is going to win the whole thing. And looking at the over-under, they have it at 159.5. I'm taking the over. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think there's going to be points to be found all over the place here. I think Florida is going to keep it tight. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being like a 2-point game. I think that the bookmakers and the odd makers have it right on the money here. I really like 2.5 as the line. I don't know where I would go with the spread, but I mean, I guess Auburn, but I like Auburn ML tonight, and I like the over 159.5. Going to the late game, Houston versus Duke. I think this game will be significantly less exciting. I think Duke is going to win. And to be honest, I think they're going to do it handedly. I think Duke is just a powerhouse. Cooper Flag is in his bag right now. I don't know how you find an answer for what he does. I think Auburn just has so much scoring prowess that they can outpace Duke over the course of one game. But I don't think Houston has the scorers on their team across the board to be able to do that. So I like Duke, to be honest. I like the Duke spread -4.5, and I like the under 136.5. I think Houston are going to lean heavily on the defensive culture. I think Houston is going to come out, and I think they're going to say, stop Cooper Flag at all costs, make this a dirty, muddy, foul-laden game. And I just think that Duke is going to find their way to have answers to that kind of approach. So I like the under 136.5, and I like Duke -4.5. So a quick recap for everybody. Auburn, ML, over 159.5 for that game. Duke -4.5 and under 136.5 are going to be my picks. And I like Auburn to bring it home. War Eagle.
I love where your head's at on that. I gotta bring up this Duke Houston game because my wife she went to Duke and she's a Cameron crazy. She used to do the black camping and stuff.
Oh my God.
Stay out there for North Carolina. You'd have to come back from your winter break and immediately have to start tenting, even if that game wasn't until like March 13th.
Yeah.
So I think Duke is going to beat the living daylights out of Houston, which really breaks my heart being a Miami guy. I really hate Duke. I've always hated everything about Duke. I went to my wife's reunion last year and I still hate everything about Duke.
Welcome to the club, brother.
It's really terrible, but I think they're going to kill Houston. I think that their offense is too good. They always say in the Final Four, take unders, but I do think you're right. In that other game, 90-81, Florida versus Auburn, the first time they played this year.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like the SEC is just high scoring. Neither one of those teams plays that much defense. But I think Houston, they were exposed by Gonzaga, and they're very lucky Gonzaga doesn't know how to run a last play of the game. Because if Gonzaga knew how to run the last play of the game, Gonzaga might be in the Final Four playing against Duke right now. Because Gonzaga had Houston beat. They sped them up. They made them play their style. So I really, really think that Duke is going to blow Houston out. And that total, I agree with you. The under is the right play, but I'm so scared that Duke wins that game like 80-65.
God.
I can see them really putting a hammer down on Houston because look, Houston's defense, #1 in the country in terms of points allowed. They have 76 to Gonzaga. That's a lot of points, and Duke plays faster than Gonzaga. So I don't know.
And so that's why I think they blow them out. Is I just don't know how they keep up. But I think when the game starts, everybody's fresh. The fatigue hasn't hit in yet. The spirit hasn't been broken yet by Houston. I think they're going to try and keep the game as slow as they possibly can. So I think early on, the total is going to be pushed down. But if Houston can't do that, then it could get ugly. Like you said, it could be like a 90-60 kind of game.
Yeah. All right. But that was a wild.
Regardless, I can't wait to watch tonight.
Yeah, that was a wild podcast. We just went over 2 hours. My first longer than 2 hour podcast in a while. It feels good to be back. Crack the neck. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely.
We covered everything. So you got everything you could possibly need. We got Survivor 48, episode 7. We have Survivor 50 talk. We have 52 talk. We have Final Four talk. I don't know what more you could need on a Saturday. I'm going to a bar. I'm ready to go watch some college basketball.
Oh, yeah.
So, Gabe, thank you all so much. Thank you all. Thank you for joining. I'm like just so in the mindset of like thanking the fans already. But thank you for joining. This was a pleasure. I'm so happy to have you on. I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, become a patron, patreon.com/thespecialist if you want even more Survivor coverage. And tune in on Wednesday night when Will and I are going to be recapping the episode. If you are following Australian Survivor, McKenna and I will be live on Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, which I do realize is right over the national championship, but that's the best we could do. Gabe, that's it. Thank you so much. Everybody else, we'll see you on Wednesday.
All right, awesome.